I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here I am. My name's Jack, and I've been married to Lisa for about 5 years now. On the surface, everything looked fine. We had a nice house, a good life, and I thought we were happy. But I guess I was blind to the signs that things were falling apart beneath that shiny veneer. It all started subtly, little things. Lisa was more irritable than usual, snapping at me over small stuff, avoiding intimacy, and her phone was always glued to her hand. She'd lie about where she was going or who she was talking to. I chalked it up to work stress at first, or maybe just a phase she was going through. But then the stories started to sound hollow, and her excuses became more frequent and less convincing. Still, I didn't want to believe she was cheating. Not really. I was convinced she'd never do that to me. After all, we'd been through a lot together, especially my PTSD. I served in Iraq, and the trauma left scars I don't talk about much. I've always trusted therapy, especially the group I joined after my service. It's a safe space, they say. But that trust was shattered recently, and I think that's when everything started to crumble for me. See, Lisa was always eager to hear about my therapy sessions, asking questions about my progress, and acting like she cared. But I later realized she wasn't just curious. She was sneaking around behind my back. The first real clue that something was wrong came from a strange, tiny detail. I'd been noticing a lot of late nights and odd hours where she'd be at work. But her phone kept ringing in the middle of the night, or I'd find her texting someone under the table when she thought I wasn't paying attention. Nothing concrete, just little feelings that gnawed at me. Then one day, I saw her phone lying face down in the bathroom, and I caught a glimpse of a message from some guy named Kevin. It wasn't even the content that hit me hardest, though it was bad enough. It was the way her fingers typed with this strange, almost nervous energy, like she was hiding something. I started paying closer attention. She was more defensive when I asked about her plans. Her stories didn't add up anymore. I'd pick up her phone to see if she was lying, and I'd notice odd timestamps on her messages. Sometimes she'd be quick to shut her laptop when I entered the room, or she'd make up some excuse about how her phone was bugging her or she was talking to her sister. But I knew better. I knew she was hiding something. Then came the day I accidentally saw her with another guy. I was at the grocery store just doing my usual shopping when I saw her at a restaurant a few blocks from home. Sitting across from Kevin, laughing, touching his arm way too much. My stomach clenched. I froze, watching the scene unfold. She looked beautiful, confident, what she wasn't when she was with me. That moment hit me harder than any of my flashbacks. I felt a cold, sinking betrayal in my chest. I knew then that what I suspected was true. She was cheating on me. I wasn't just paranoid. This wasn't some misinterpretation. She'd been lying, sneaking around, and I had proof. That's when everything started to spiral out of control. I couldn't just ignore it anymore, not after seeing her with my own eyes. All those nights I thought she was working late or out with friends, she was with Kevin, and I was left to piece it all together afterward. What made it worse was how she lied outright when I finally confronted her. I told her I saw her, and her first reaction was to act innocent. She said she was just meeting a client or a friend trying to brush it off. She said Kevin was just an old friend from college and they just bumped into each other. Yeah, right. She played the victim card, saying I was overreacting, that I was paranoid because of my PTSD, that she loved me and wouldn't do that. But I wasn't buying it anymore. That moment, standing there, realizing my wife had been lying, cheating, and betraying my trust, it shattered something inside me. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was how easily she spun her lies, how little she cared about my feelings or the pain she caused. I felt a deep, visceral rage and sadness all at once. I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare and I couldn't wake up. It was all so sudden, so brutal, and I knew deep down I had to do something. I just didn't know what yet. After I saw her with Kevin, I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, trying to process how everything I trusted had been turned into a lie. I felt numb and furious at the same time. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her get away with this for so long. But the truth was, I'd been blinded by the comfort of our routine, by her charm, and by my own denial. I wanted to believe she was faithful because admitting otherwise meant facing a pain I wasn't sure I could handle. The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. I needed to confront her, but I also knew I couldn't do it without a plan. I couldn't just yell and accuse her without proof. She was good at lying, and she'd probably deny everything, spin her stories, and turn it all around on me. So I started gathering evidence. I went through her phone when she wasn't looking, checked her social media accounts, and even installed a discreet app on her phone that could track her location and monitor her messages. It felt sneaky, but at that point I was desperate for the truth. A few days later, I found myself waiting for her, ready to catch her in the act. I knew she'd be with Kevin again, or maybe with someone else. I was almost hoping to catch her red-handed, just so I wouldn't keep living in this fog of doubt. Sure enough, one evening she told me she was going to meet her friend for drinks. I watched her leave, heart pounding, and then I followed at a safe distance. I had my phone ready just in case I needed proof. She went straight to that restaurant again, and this time she was with someone new. It was her. Kevin. No, that's not right. There was another guy. I didn't recognize him at first, but he looked familiar, a guy from her office. They sat close, touching hands, laughing like they were the only two people in the world. My stomach knotted so badly I thought I'd be sick. I stayed across the street watching her, feeling like a damn fool for trusting her for so long. It was then I decided I had to do more than just watch. I had to confront her face to face, but I wanted to do it in a way that left no room for her to deny or manipulate. I waited until she came back home that night, heart pounding in my chest. I kept my phone hidden, ready to record if I needed to, and when she walked in, I just lost it. I told her I knew she was cheating, that I'd seen her with Kevin and the other guy. Her reaction was instant. She spun into this aggressive, bitchy tone, trying to gaslight me, saying I was crazy, that I was seeing things, or maybe that I was just jealous. She said I was overreacting because of my PTSD, that I was imagining things, that she hadn't done anything wrong. She even dared to call me paranoid. That's when the real anger started to boil over. I was done listening to her bullshit. I told her I had proof, screenshots, recordings, everything. I told her I was sick of her lies, her excuses, her manipulations. I told her I couldn't believe she'd been screwing around with my therapist's group leader, someone who knew all my war traumas, who was supposed to help me heal, and she used that trust to get close and then betray me. That betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was hemorrhaging inside. Her face twisted, trying to look innocent, but I knew better now. She looked at me with this contemptuous sneer, like I was a joke. She kept lying, insisting she wasn't cheating, that I was crazy for accusing her. I had to hold back from smashing something. The rage inside me felt like it was about to explode. All those nights I'd been vulnerable with her, trusting her with my pain and my secrets, and she was out there with other men, using my trauma for her own selfish needs. It was like a punch in the gut every time I thought about it. That night, everything changed. I realized I wasn't going to get the truth from her, not honestly. She was a master of lies, and I was done being the fool. I decided I needed to get out, to take control of what was left of my dignity. I told her I was leaving, that I'd had enough of her lies and betrayal. She didn't even try to stop me, just spat some more lies and rolled her eyes. Honestly, I don't even know why I expected her to be different, so I packed a bag and left that night. I didn't want to stay in that toxic house, surrounded by her lies anymore. I felt broken, but at least I was free. The worst part was knowing she was probably already planning her next move, maybe trying to spin her way out of it. That's when I realized this wasn't just about cheating. It was about trust, betrayal, and how badly someone can hurt you when you're most vulnerable. I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but I do know I can't stay in this mess forever. I need time to breathe, to heal, and to figure out if I can ever really trust again. After I left that night, I didn't sleep much. My mind kept replaying everything: her sneers, her lies, the way she looked at Kevin and that other guy like I was nothing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, left to pick myself up in pieces. My PTSD had already made my life a mess, and now this betrayal just made it 10 times worse. I thought I knew her. I thought she was the one person I could trust with my pain, my secrets, my everything. Turns out I was dead wrong. I stayed with a buddy for a couple of days, trying to get my head straight. I couldn't believe how blind I had been, how I'd ignored the signs because I wanted to believe she loved me. But that trust was a fragile thing, and she shattered it in one swift, cruel blow. The thing that haunted me most was knowing how deeply she'd betrayed my trauma, how she used my vulnerabilities against me. She knew what I'd been through, and she still chose to screw around with other men, knowing how much it would hurt me. I started to think about what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm back and demand answers, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. Lisa was good at lying, and I didn't trust her at all anymore. I decided the best course was to gather more solid proof and then confront her again, but this time with the intention to end it for good. I got my phone, tracked her movements, and kept recording everything I saw and heard. Over the next couple of days, I noticed she was trying to act like nothing had happened. She'd send me fake "I miss you" texts, act like she was the victim, trying to manipulate me into coming back. Honestly, it made me sick. I felt like I was stuck in some terrible nightmare, one I couldn't wake up from. The more I watched her, the more I realized how much she'd lied to me, how she'd played me like a fool. I couldn't believe I'd been so naive, so trusting, when all along she was sneaking around, fucking my therapist's group leader and probably more people. One day, I decided I'd had enough. I set up a plan to catch her red-handed if I could. I told her I wanted to come home, but I also told her I was suspicious of her. I said I'd be waiting for her to come clean. I wanted to see how she'd react, whether she'd try to deny everything or just come clean. The anticipation was killing me, but at least I was taking control of the situation now. That evening she came home late looking nervous. I had my phone ready, hidden where she wouldn't see. As soon as she walked in, I called her out. I told her I knew she'd been lying, cheating, and using me. Her eyes flicked nervously, and she started to spin her usual stories. How she was just talking to Kevin because they were old friends, how the other guy was just a coworker she'd run into. She kept trying to spin her web of lies, but I wasn't having it anymore. I pulled out the recordings I'd made, showing her the screenshots of her messages and the footage of her with those guys. The look on her face was priceless, like she'd been caught in a trap she couldn't wiggle out of. She tried to deny everything to look innocent, but I could see through her. The anger and disappointment I felt boiled over. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this, knowing what I've been through, knowing how much I needed her to be loyal? She got defensive, throwing everything back at me, blaming my PTSD, saying I was insecure, that I was imagining things. She called me paranoid, told me I was overreacting. But I knew the truth, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it. I told her I was done. Done trusting her, done pretending I didn't see what she was doing. I told her I was leaving for good this time, that I'd never let her tear me down again. She looked furious, sneering at me like I was the one at fault. That's when I knew I'd made my decision. I was done with her bullshit. I couldn't stay with a woman who'd do this to me, who used my trauma as a weapon. That night, I packed what I could and walked out of that house for good. I didn't want her near me anymore, not after what she did. It hurt like hell. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe, and I kept wondering how I'd let myself get so blindsided. But deep down, I knew I had to cut her loose, for my own mental health and sanity. I realized that trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight, especially not with someone who's hurt you this badly. I needed space, time to heal, and figuring out how to move forward without her. Now, sitting here, I can't help but think about everything I've learned. Betrayal cuts deep, especially when it involves your most vulnerable secrets. I trusted her with my trauma, and she used that trust to stab me in the back. It's a brutal lesson, but one I needed to learn. I don't know what the future holds, whether I'll ever be able to trust again, whether I'll find someone who truly cares, but I do know that I'll never let someone betray me like this again. And to anyone else out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore those signs, because once that trust is broken, everything changes. And sometimes the only way to heal is to walk away and start over. The days that followed were some of the darkest I've ever experienced. I felt like I was stuck in a fog, numb and angry all at once. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sneering face, heard her lies, and remembered how she used my trauma against me. It was like betrayal had become this heavy weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I had no energy, no motivation, just this aching emptiness that kept dragging me into darker thoughts. Honestly, I didn't even want to get out of bed most mornings. I knew I had to do something, though. I couldn't let her win, not like this. I had to fight through the pain, the confusion, and figure out what I was going to do next. I started by reaching out to some of the guys from my PTSD support group. I'd always been close to a few of them, and I needed to hear from people who understood what I'd been through, people who could tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling so hurt and betrayed. They listened patiently as I told them everything, about Lisa, about Kevin, about the affair, and how I'd caught her with that other guy. Their advice was simple but powerful. Walk away, heal, and don't let her manipulate your mind anymore. That was a huge relief to hear. It made me realize that I had to stop blaming myself or questioning my own instincts. It was her that betrayed me, not the other way around. That realization felt like a small piece of light in the darkness, like I was finally starting to take control of my life again. But even with that, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. I'd lost my wife, someone I thought I knew, and it hurt more than I expected. I kept thinking about the times she lied, how she'd look me in the eyes and deceive me so effortlessly. I felt like I'd been a fool, trusting her with my most vulnerable secrets, only to have them used against me. I kept asking myself how I could have been so blind, so naive. How did I miss all the signs? Was I just too broken to see the truth? One thing I realized is that her betrayal wasn't just about the cheating, it was about what it represented. She had taken all the trust I'd ever given her and shattered it into pieces. That kind of hurt doesn't go away overnight. It's like I was walking around with a gaping wound, and every little thing reminded me of what I'd lost. It was a crushing feeling, knowing that the woman I loved, the woman I married, had lied to me, used my trauma against me, and then walked out. I also started to think about my future. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life feeling this way, drowning in anger and regret. Maybe I needed therapy again, not just for my PTSD, but for how to deal with this heartbreak. I couldn't let her steal my happiness, not forever. I had to find a way to rebuild myself, to find some peace. I even started considering whether I wanted to try dating again, but that thought scared me. Trust is so fragile after what I went through, and I wasn't sure I was ready. The thing that kept me going was this idea that I wasn't completely broken. Yeah, I was hurt deeply, but I was still standing. I reminded myself that I had survived things most people wouldn't understand, the war, the trauma, the loneliness, and I could survive this too. I told myself I'd get through it, one day at a time. I'd start by taking care of myself, eating better, sleeping when I could, reaching out to friends. I knew I couldn't undo what she did, but I could control how I responded. That was the only way I was going to make it through these terrible days. And so I kept going, even if it felt like I was barely holding on. I stayed in touch with my support group, kept working on my therapy, and tried not to dwell on the pain. I knew that someday I would get better. Maybe I'd find someone who truly cared, or maybe I'd learn how to live with the scars she left behind. Whatever the future held, I was determined not to let her destroy everything I had left. I owed myself that much. And honestly, I think that's what kept me going, the tiny hope that someday I'd rebuild my life stronger than ever, free of her betrayals. It's been a few weeks since I left her, and I've learned a lot about myself in that time. At first, I was just raw, angry, and broken. The betrayal cut so deep that I pretty much spiraled into a dark place. I'd wake up and lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The lies, the sneers, the way she used my PTSD against me. There was a moment when I thought I'd never get out of that hole, that I'd never be able to trust again. But slowly, piece by piece, I started to rebuild my mental foundation. I went back to therapy, not just to deal with my PTSD, but also to process what happened. Talking openly about her betrayal to a professional helped me see things more clearly. I realized how much I'd been blindsided, how her manipulation and lies had been a form of emotional abuse. The therapist helped me understand that my trauma made me vulnerable, but it didn't make me weak. It just meant I needed to learn how to set boundaries and recognize red flags earlier. Meanwhile, I cut almost all contact with Lisa. It's not just about cutting her out physically, but also mentally. I blocked her on social media, deleted her number, and made a conscious decision to stop obsessing over what she was doing or saying. I needed space from her toxicity. That space gave me clarity. I realized she'd been a liar from the start, and her betrayal was just the culmination of years of deception. I kept reminding myself that I deserved better, that I was worth more than someone who would use my most vulnerable secrets against me. I also started focusing on myself. I hit the gym more regularly, got back into running, and even picked up some hobbies I'd ignored for years. I forced myself to get outside, breathe fresh air, and reconnect with friends who genuinely cared. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt like giving up, like I'd never be able to trust again or find happiness. But I kept pushing. I kept telling myself that pain was temporary and healing was possible, even for someone as broken as me right now. One of the biggest turning points came when I finally admitted to myself that I had been codependent on her. I'd built my entire identity around trying to make her happy, trying to keep her satisfied, and ignoring my own needs. That realization was painful but necessary. I started setting boundaries, learning to say no, and prioritizing my mental health over everything else. I finally understood that I couldn't force someone to stay if they didn't want to be with me, and that's okay. Some people are just not meant to be in your life forever, no matter how much you love them. I also reached out to a couple of old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. Talking to them was like opening a window in a stuffy room. Suddenly, I could breathe more easily. They reminded me of who I was before all this happened, and that helped me reconnect with my core strength. I started to see myself not just as a victim of betrayal, but as someone capable of healing and moving forward. It gave me a new sense of hope. Most importantly, I stopped beating myself up. I told myself that it wasn't my fault she cheated, lied, and used my trauma against me. I didn't deserve that. I've been through hell, but I'm still standing. And I'm starting to believe that I can find happiness again, maybe not with her, but with someone who truly cares. I guess what I want to say to anyone reading this who's been betrayed like I was, it hurts like hell, but you are not broken forever. Give yourself time to grieve, to heal, and most importantly, to rediscover your worth. You are stronger than your pain. And someday, you'll look back at this and realize it was just a chapter, one you survived and will eventually leave behind. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've changed. How much I've had to grow just to survive this nightmare. The betrayal hurt so badly I thought I'd never come out the other side. For a while, I felt like I was just existing, going through the motions, trying to keep my head above water. But somewhere in that darkness, I found a flicker of something else, a determination to rebuild, to find a new sense of peace. I learned that trust isn't something you can give away blindly anymore, not without cautious steps. I also learned that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others, and that's okay. What matters is that I'm still here, still fighting, still trying. I don't think I'll ever forget what she did, but I've come to accept it as part of my story, something I survived, not something that defines me. I've come to accept that sometimes people aren't who they seem, and that's a hard lesson, but it's necessary. Most of all, I've realized that I don't need her or anyone like her in my life to be whole. I can stand on my own, even with all the scars. Maybe someday I'll trust again, maybe not completely, but enough to open my heart. Slowly. Right now, I focus on just getting better day by day. I remind myself that I'm worth more than her lies, her betrayal, her empty promises. I deserve someone who won't use my trauma as a weapon, who will love me for who I am, scars and all. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone else going through something similar, it's this. Don't let betrayal define you. Don't let it crush your spirit or make you doubt your worth. Yes, it hurts like hell, and yes, it takes time. But healing is possible. You are stronger than your pain. Trust your instincts, lean on those who care, and never forget your own value. The worst pain eventually becomes part of your story, but it doesn't have to be the end of it. You can rebuild, you can heal, and you can find happiness again. Just take it one step at a time.